like he's flying through a space-time portal. He's got Ivan guiding him there. Thinking, hey, diddle diddle, there's a cat but no fiddle. That's okay, he's the reason we care. Angus took a big chance on this man and cat romance, so now Socks always knows what to say. If only Buzz wasn't Zurg, it's a plot twist that's absurd. But having Socks makes the movie okay, so we record about Socks this way. Talk this way. Socks this way. Podcast today. Grant this way. Dimitri this way. They have guests. Sometimes good guests. So listen to this. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of What the Hell Happened to Them. I am your host, Patrick Skeyhill, and no Joe Vekeman this week, so we decided to do one of our mini episodes that we haven't done in many, almost a decade, geez. And most of them don't even ever get released. They just sort of exist there in the ether, in the vault. Perhaps we'll release them for some anniversary at some point. But they're there. This sub-series we're going to call Pod People, and, we being in the podcast community and in the film arts community, know a lot of other film arts podcast creators, and we thought we'd want to give them some shout-outs. Obviously, the first one we thought of is frequent guest of the cast, Grant Keller's podcast, Socks Talk, now called Clodcast. We'll get to that in a moment. But Grant, why don't you introduce yourself to us real quick?
Hi, I'm Grant. You can hear me on the Super Pets episode, the Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle episode, and everyone's favorite Nicholson movie, The Two Jigs.
That's a good memory you have there. His co-host is joining us, too. We've been trying to get him on the cast, but it's never kind of synced up. Dimitri.
You've been trying.
Hey. Well, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, actually. Keogh?
Keogh.
Keogh?
You've been trying. You know, my phone's been firmly on the hook. But I am absolutely pleased as punch to be here. I've been really stumping for What the Hell Happened to Them episode, so I guess I get my own little mini episode. Yet to make the main series, but, who knows? Maybe this is my launch pad.
And the two of you are both writers. Tell us what got you into writing.
Okay, Grant looks visibly confused, so I'll get into it. I feel like always just made up stories in my head. I had a lot of friends, so I would just kind of keep myself occupied, and then I was like, holy shit, why don't I write some of this stuff down? It's pretty good. And then a high school teacher got me really into it, and they were like, you know what, they like movies. Why don't you try screenwriting? Do you know what that is? And then I read Screenplay by Sid Field, as many a high schooler
as we all do.
And I got really into it, and then I kind of just went whole hog, and I was like, I guess I'm going to film school and going to this, and now here I am. And you know what, kids? When you make these life decisions and you spend so much money at Chapman University, one day you can host a podcast about a minor Pixar character. So, you know what?
All right, what about you, Grant?
I was like big on Pixar as a kid. It was kind of my whole personality, as my go-to line was, I'm Mike Wazowski if he was a human.
I don't know who's that?
He's the green ball voiced by Billy Crystal in Monsters, Inc.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. Okay, yes.
What? That's a crazy one for you if not.
Oh, the guy with the big eye, the main guy. Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Okay, you know him.
Go on.
And since I was always into movies like that, and I'd been on set before and realized it's a whole lot of waiting, I didn't want to do any of that stuff. I wanted to do all the fun stuff, which is story and character, which is how I got into writing. And then a fun fact we discovered, I'd kind of already been writing, because in my tween-age years, I ran a whole DC universe on Instagram where we'd write as characters to each other.
Wow, social media, a land I will continue to never understand. It sounds like you had that Pixar reference earlier to the Billy Crystal character, so it makes sense why, Grant, you'd want to do a podcast entirely on Clod, the character from Elemental. But your podcast actually began as Socks Talk about the character from the movie Lightyear. You've said on the show why you did it, right, is to justify your expensive toy that you bought. But yeah. How'd you get Dimitri roped into that?
I'm available.
I mean, that's number one. But number two is we'd been trying to do a podcast for a while, but we kept failing at it. And then because I had the $400 investment, and I was like, we're doing this. Dimitri felt he couldn't back out of it.
Dimitri, you didn't buy it though. Like, why? You could back out.
See, Grant says that, but the $400, like, not into it. Grant spent more on toys, so I don't think it's that much of an investment. I'm like, oh, Grant spent more. This is not like if I spent $400 on a socks toy, that would be fucking something. But no. We have been wanting to do a podcast for a while, so, and it felt like the idea was never super stuck. But for some reason, this one was like, okay, we just do Lightyear, we just do socks, we really focus in on it. And there is this insanity thing where, like, you talk about this thing for so much and it's the same thing and you analyze it and go deeper. It is like a descent into madness. And that's where I was like, I'm interested. And, talking to Grant, which Grant and I ended up talking about this a lot in our free time, and we still do, more so now than we did before, but it's like permeated our personal lives. So it's kind of like, oh, well, yeah, we're going to talk about this anyway. Might as well like siphon it into like a certain amount of time and I guess like put it out there. We get like ones of listeners. So like it's, it's like fine, and it's fine for now until it absolutely cripples our careers, but we'll see.
So you watch the same movie every week and you try to find different things to talk about socks. You have your guests on and they bring kind of a different topic that tangentially relates to the movie. Watching the movie over and over again, it reminds me of this other Sandler podcast, those bastards, where they watch Grown Ups every week.
Yeah, what the worst idea of all time.
Was that an inspiration for your format?
No, because Grant hasn't listened to it. But when we did it, when it was pitched, I was like, oh, this is kind of like that. And Sock Talk, I feel like it was to one extent because Grant would watch it every week, but I didn't watch it every week.
Yeah, you're sort of cheating, it sounds like.
I cheated, but then...
Pat, I've seen Lightyear 20 times.
I feel really bad for you.
And and Dimitri's seen it 8?
I've seen it 8 times, but 8 was brutal. But
8 was brutal?
But where we found synergy in Clodcast. Like, this is the best podcast we've ever done.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a moment.
I know we're going to get to it, but that's where I feel like we've really channeled the worst idea of all time, where it's like, now the podcast, while it is about a minor Pixar character in a feature film, it's also tracking our mental health and just our descent into not wanting to do this anymore. And why are we doing this? And to what, and does this hurt Clod at all? Just like, did it hurt socks? And if that was any test, it did not, but the listeners can find out for themselves.
Well, so you guys have an interesting backdoor now, right? If you do get to the point where your sanity is stretched, because now you've sort of set up that you can suddenly switch gears, right? So after Socks and Lightyear became too much, you then did the Mendler cast that I did an episode on that will never see the light of day. This was following actress Bridget Mendler. Who is that, and why did you want to follow her?
It was essentially a nicher version of your show.
This is kind of my baby, and
it's not my baby. I can say that.
And I brought it to term twice, and it died on the table both times.
2 miscarriages.
Yeah, it was kind of brutal. We had a third co-host, and
the first time,
and we did it.
Oh, okay, not the time I was on.
No, and we did it for.
I think this was before we knew you.
Oh, this is that old of a night. This was one of the failed projects from before.
Yes, yeah. And we did it, and the episodes were super long. It'd be like 4 hours of records, and
yeah.
And I was like, I'll edit them because I edited some of the previous failures. Excuse me. And then I got too busy, and it was like, these are monstrous, and they didn't turn out great, even in the record. While the records might have been kind of fun, they were just too strenuous. We didn't really have it going on. So then that just, again, died. And then after Socks Talk...
Also, Socks Talk was the first show I edited it.
Yes, and Grant...
That's why it got done.
Yeah, exactly. And Grant fully committed. So then after that, we were talking, and we were like, well, Clodcast was in the hopper, but we were like, let's do a break. And I was like, let's do Mendlercast again. And then somehow Grant said yes, and we did it, and it failed again. And this only lays on my shoulders.
But you did like 6 episodes. Like, what happened? What went wrong?
We recorded 6 episodes, and Dimitri mentioned the 4-hour records. That was in the first attempt. And we were like, we're going to fix that. And I was like, we're going to have a hard rule of an hour of recording. And then every single episode went 2.5 hours or more.
I mean, you could break it up and be like an hour, part 1, and then it's now part 2 of this person's episode.
But Grant loves to chop and cut to the thinnest degree, which I don't like. But again, I'm not editing the episode.
Every episode of the Clodcast we've recorded for 90 minutes, and I have gotten it to around 35.
Wow. What's all this dead air you're cutting out? Is it just stuff that's not related?
It's that, but mostly Dimitri likes to get a little dicey behind the scenes.
No, he's got some hot takes, does he?
Not that dicey. It's not that dicey where we go from 2 hours.
It's not dicey in a way. It's just too sensual. It's honestly what it is. And I leave in a lot of sensual stuff too. So
no, but listening to some of the episodes.
What are we talking about the Bridget stuff, or are we?
We're talking about Clod.
Well, what happened to the Bridget Mendler cast?
Essentially, we got through the good quote unquote. All movies were tough to watch.
All of them were bad.
Did you go in order, or did you just jump around?
We just jumped around because we knew we could get guests who wanted to do the famous ones.
Yes, but then we eventually got to a point where A, I don't think we were super happy with the quality of episode, and B, there were we had like half our filmography left or more, and they were kind of duds, and we were like, who can we grab? What can we do? Etc. And akin to, what's different with Sock Talk, we had a couple solo episodes, but especially Clodcast, those we can do solo. We love a guest, but we don't have to have one. We can just kind of chat amongst ourselves about stuff. But it's hard to do with Mendler. We hadn't figured that out yet, so you run out a lot to talk about because the only thing interesting about Bridget Mendler is that she stopped being an actor and then became like a scientist. But we don't know anything about science, and nor is she public.
Alvin and the Chipmunks wasn't bringing in the checks.
Yeah, nor is she like public about her life anymore. So it's like, oh, this was an interesting child actor who went on to live a normal life. That's the end of the topic. There's really not much to go into. Like, you don't have the section in yours where you're like, why did they do this movie? She did this movie because she was a child and she didn't think about it.
So now that you're back on Clod and doing Elemental, do you think your thing will now be minor Pixar characters going forward? Is that the niche?
100%. We have, sequel seasons in the back of our minds that like, okay, eventually we will move on from Clod. So it's like, what's the next move? And I'd say we have at least 3 concrete ideas that we could pivot to, and we're constantly thinking of more because, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we're just going to do this for a while, but...
That's so much editing.
Yeah, in my show, when an actor runs out of movies, like, that's our time to move on. What's your thing? Do you have a set timeline? Do you go until you guys can't stand the movie anymore? Does that become like a fun competition? Like, which movie can we do the most?
Until I don't know. Grant and I actually have talked about this relatively recently about like, when do we know it's done? I feel like Grant's going to be done before me, but I will drag him through a few more movies because I think... Because it is brutal, and I want to explore the depths of how insane and how much we will hate this movie by the end of it. But, essentially, we release bi-weekly, so, you get to 25 episodes, you essentially have a year's worth of episodes. So I think, like, at least 25 watches. I'm kind of thinking maybe closer to 30, and then we can pivot to... And Grant's laughing because Grant's like, there's no way in hell. I disagree. I think we're going to go until the wheels fall off, Pat. I'm thinking between 25 and 30 watches, and then we will have to... then we'll have to pivot and, honestly, probably take a break. Probably take a little bit of a podcasting break. We'll have them banked, and then we'll kind of... figure out the next pivot, because there are a few options, and I think Grant likes a couple of them.
For a few of our options, some of them are for good movies, and I don't want to burn the good movies to the ground like that. But
that's like a fun experiment, I think, right? Like this movie that you like, and now what happens when you watch it so many times in succession? Like when you say a word over and over again and it loses meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then it's also like we have it built in. Mm-hmm. Socks Talk 2 Old Socks. And
that's our like when we die.
Essentially, just like Matrix Resurrections, I want to go back to the socks talk. And I want to explore what I didn't explore the first time and watch it every week and truly contemplate death. And I think that's very exciting.
I'm really going to be like old Buzz.
I like looking in the black hole and feeling the call to the void.
You've got 3 episodes of the Clodcast out so far. I've listened to all of them.
You're our most loyal listener.
Yeah, your arc this season reminds me of my arc in my podcast, where I spent the whole first season not wanting to be there, being super grumpy that Joe was making me go do the show, hating it all, going out of my way to hate it all. Mm-hmm. And then something happened during the Rock season, and even though those movies were terrible, like when we came back to do the cast, like I was all game. I'm like, we're gonna do it right this time. We're gonna clean up our recordings. We're gonna try harder. We're gonna polish this off a lot more. And that's what I've been getting a lot from you and your enthusiasm and being in the show and actually watching the movie. Like, it's been nice to see.
I think Grant would agree with that. I'm so much more.
You're not annoying about doing it anymore. That's certainly true.
No, I'm so much more game and excited. If you remember in
Sock Talk, there's some episodes Dimitri refused to be on.
Yeah. No, that's just one, Grant scheduled it and I couldn't do it. So then we just wouldn't. But nowadays, if I can't do a record, we won't do it. Like there won't be an episode of Clodcast I won't be on. But see, Grant
might be an episode of Clodcast I don't want to do.
Grant used it honestly, and I would be down. I would take the burden and be like, "All right, we're gonna do like an hour and a half episode where Grant's not." If Grant doesn't want to do it, Grant can take a break because I did it for Sock Talk. But I'm 100% committed to this one for sure. Way more than Sock Talk seems like a lifetime ago at this point. Yeah. I truly am a new man.
It has been a while. Like, it was a nice surprise because it had been many months since you had released an episode.
Yeah, I think Sock Talk ended late November, early December last year, and then we didn't come back till June.
And we finished those records. In
May.
Okay. Yeah, or May. So they were done.
The problem with Sock Talk was I was so behind on editing that if we recorded a new episode, I wouldn't be able to get to it to 6 months.
It was daunting.
And yeah,
and now we do an episode, I edit it the next day and it's done.
And Sock Talk was very much in our college years, and
we were busy with other stuff.
Busy with school, I was in a relationship, and now I'm single, and I'm like, let's talk about Clod. Let's talk about
unemployed.
Clod.
Nothing brings the ladies like Clod.
Let's do Clod twice, 3 times a week. I'll watch Elemental 3 times in a week. What do I gotta do? I'll do it.
I like Grant making it interesting for himself, and he did the audio description this time around.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Grant loves. I have yet to in the episode. I've only ever done something fun with the watches once. I've done a commentary, and that will come out later, or I listen to the commentary. But Grant will do these fun watches. I'm watching this thing. I'm raw dogging it.
You could do a black and white one. You could try to do a silent one.
Elemental Noir, absolutely, yeah.
I want to do Elemental the foreign film where I put on the foreign audio with American subtitles.
That would be amusing. And then you've known the movie so well, you can see where the subtitles differ. That'd be interesting.
That's interesting. Maybe I can learn a new language through this, the way people learn English from movies.
Is Firish different in different languages? This is what we have to find out. Mm-hmm. We don't know the answer to these questions.
I'm going to do this for the one coming up this week. I'm going to read the script.
Oh, that's very interesting too.
I can send you the script, Dimitri, if you want it. But it's also on Empire for your consideration.
I sent it to me. I don't know if I'll have time to read it by then, but I actually... you know what? I might. I'm going to a Dodgers game Sunday. This is gonna get cut.
I'm putting the fucking Elemental script to a Dodgers game.
No.
There's so much break downtime, though. I don't blame him.
I actually might not be able to get it this week. It's gonna happen though.
Okay, all right, that's cool.
I might watch Elemental on a train though.
Before we get further deep into Clod, and then I want to talk Pixar in general a bit. Now that you have a new show. New season, obviously the Sock Top theme doesn't work. So Lev and I decided to build you a new theme for the Clodcast.
No way.
And we're going to premiere that right now.
Holy shit.
Socks the cat, he was a robo-therapist. He's like Frasier with a lot more fur. Buzz the Lightyear was a star commander, and yet somehow was also Zurg. Angus MacLean was the brains behind them, but the job's no longer his. Bridget Mendler, something, something. I don't really know who that is. And then there's Clod. No, I said Clod. I swear we're talking Clod. That's streetly wise and tiny size and earthly Clod. There you go.
That's incredible.
I'm blown away. Pat, I need you to know I am going to go into all the episodes we have edited, and I am putting it in. Because we have episodes till November, so I have to put it in now.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't want to leave that out.
No, we can't leave it out. Are you kidding me?
Are you kidding? Oh my god, that was so good.
That's truly incredible.
Yes. All right. So why Clod? Why Elemental? Elemental, I guess, came out somewhat recently, but why Clod himself?
The marketing shoved him down your throat like he was going to be the third lead.
Okay.
But every piece of marketing he's in is his first scene, which is the only substantial moment he has in the film. You can tell while they were marketing this movie, they're like, you know what's really gonna get butts in seats is the element city. You know, the thing the movie's not about in like any way.
Yeah.
So they needed an earth and a wind element, and so they're like, the only one of any value, and that's 3 minutes of a 90-minute movie, is this boy.
Okay.
So Claude's everywhere, and he shouldn't be. Okay. But because he is, we have to love him.
Okay.
Yeah, like essentially, you know, the marketing of Elemental is something we will talk about on the episode, but we're saving it because we're saving a lot of juicy topics for later, you know, because, you know, we'll be absolutely burned out. But no, like the marketing for Elemental is absolutely baffling. And it does make it about the city, which it is not about. And it makes you think that the city is going to be well thought out, which it's not. And one of the big things is it's Ember and it's Wade. And there is some wind people. There's Gale, but she's not really a part of it. It's really Claude is like the third most like marketed person. And you're like, oh, there's going to be like a short round essentially, you know, to give something like that.
That would have been good.
No, it would have. And they're like, hey, there's going to be like, this is like Earth Kid and he's going to get into shenanigans. And he's in 3 scenes. His first scene is by far the most screen time he gets. And it's baffling. Like, when you first see that scene, you're like, oh, this is Claude's first scene. Okay, we've seen this. You know, they put the clip on YouTube. Obviously, we watched it tens of times. Okay, awesome, cool. I cannot wait to see more Claude in this movie. And then the movie goes on and you're like, oh, Claude doesn't come back. And then he comes back in a little scene and you're like, oh, okay, that's like 15 seconds.
And it's like less than 10 seconds.
Yeah. It's like, okay, cool. So Claude is, okay, that's like a tease. Claude's definitely coming back in like a scene after next. And then you don't see him until the second to last scene in the movie, essentially. And
it's the epilogue.
And I am gobsmacked. I am, what is this?
He isn't even like the third act cavalry. There's not like, a bunch of the minor characters come in and help out. No.
You'd think.
Okay. All right. Well, you guys, your first episode of the Clodcast, you actually were talking about Inside Out.
Pat, we've gotten enough guff about this.
No, I'm not giving you guff. I'm just setting up that comes across. You come across both of that as being devout Pixar fans. Like, what is it about Pixar that? Because I could give or take them like that. Yeah. They were just another people that made movies. They weren't really a part of my life. So what was it about them that you guys felt was so captivating and now you want to dedicate your podcast to them?
Do you want me to take it first, Dimitri?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think you definitely should take it first.
Okay. Well, it's like, these were the Pixar movies are the movies I grew up on. Like, 2D Disney, I didn't even watch until I got into college. Like, the only one I'd seen was Lion King. I saw Little Mermaid freshman year of college. So, like, the movies I watched again and again were Monsters, Inc., Incredibles, Nemo, that whole bunch. Cars I saw so many times. We owned most of the cars. And they were, like, the reason I got into screenwriting. Is, like, there's a bonus feature. I referenced it on our show a bunch. Michael Art, who wrote Little Miss Sunshine and Toy Story 3, has this video called Beginnings on the Toy Story 3 behind the scenes, where he's breaking down the first act structure of Monsters, Inc., The Incredibles, and Toy Story, and then how he used that to write Toy Story 3. And, like, that really just weaseled its way into my brain until, like, I learned the bones of storytelling through those movies. And I still revisit them, and I'm like, wow, the economic storytelling here is insane. Like, the one I love to go to is Monsters, Inc. sets up the entire world and the climax in the first 5 minutes. So when I think great movies, my first thought is Pixar, which is why as I grew older and the newer movies we hit the sequel period, or we hit these periods where it's not the thing I loved about the studio. Like the reason I care about Pixar is not because of the studio, it's because of the people. Because to me, it was the only studio that was truly auteur driven. There was always a distinctive voice. An Andrew Stanton movie is different than a Brad Bird movie, is different than a Pete Docter movie. And you would see these voices come out. So when they hit the period of like Monsters University or Cars 2, and these were anonymous movies, I was very disappointed. So as I've been tracking the movies and seeing new voices come up, like Adomi Shi or an Enrico Casarosa, I was getting excited. And like when Lee Unkrich, who had been the editor of Toy Story, worked his way up to directing Toy Story 3 and then made his first original movie, Coco, and then retired. And I was crushed because I'm like, he was finally making his own movies, and he retired because like, he can. And I'm like, that's cool for him, but like, think of all the movies he could have made. So it's like, they're a studio that I've known since I was 2, and I've been following forever, that everything they make feels weirdly personal to me.
How about you, Dimitri?
And I've always been a fan of the Pixar movies. Definitely grew up on them all. Absolutely. And growing up, I was like, in Alaska, there's not many guys. So like, I was like the Star Wars guy. I loved Star Wars. I wasn't that much of a nerd about Star Wars. I just kind of liked it. And I was a Pixar guy, essentially, because I was like, yeah, these movies are like for kids, but they're also for adults too. I think they're pretty good. And everyone was like, whoa, that's a hot take to make sure. Like, you really like these movies. And I was like, I do really like them. They're pretty good. Then I get to college, and I go to bat for a lot of them. I think a lot of them are great movies. In this later period, Grant and I definitely differ. I think there are some more fallow. Like I was like, this movie is kind of a clunker. But I do really like the movies, and I think they're fascinating and interesting. And then I meet Grant, and that's like Grant's whole thing, and I'm like, oh wow, I was like, oh, I like the Pixar movies a whole hell of a lot, but you like really like them. I like them. I didn't think I was going to host a podcast about them, but here we are. But
you're not going to find another guy who has a take that the Cars 3 script is a magic trick.
Exactly. So it's like, and I love talking about these movies, and if a new one comes out, I will watch it. So, and essentially it was kind of like, oh, I like Pixar a lot. And I mean, the movies we're talking about are kind of like the weird, like they're really like idiosyncratic.
They're like the redheaded stepchild.
No, exactly. It's like Lightyear's some weird like monstrosity, and Elemental is just so fucked. And it's like, who let these movies happen? And we're talking about these like weird monsters of movies, and I find that very fascinating coming from the studio that I do. It is pretty well revered, and I don't know, like the Pixar canon is like, if you want to like know Pixar really well, you watch all the movies and you do like some research, and you can be pretty well read on them. Not Grant well read. You have to go pretty deep. But like if you see the movies, you're more well read on Pixar than most people. So
if you see The Good Dinosaur, you're maybe the most well read.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a king of a tiny kingdom kind of thing. So I was kind of like, yeah, like I'll do the deep dive on these Pixar movies and hang out with my bud and chat and say unhinged things about Elemental and really unlock my brain to the to some Elemental thoughts. But yeah, like I've always loved the movies, and this arguably makes me like them both less and more. Like it doesn't harm like Ratatouille, but I am kind of like, God, this is kind of insane.
Yeah, the podcasting, when you can kind of do an interesting thing to your relationship with the things you love. We've all been there too. Well, we'd like to thank you both for stopping by. Grant and Dimitri, your podcast ride is available pretty much wherever podcasts are available.
We're definitely Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Yeah. Everywhere else is I don't know.
If you're using Podbean, get a grip. It's Apple Podcast or Spotify.
Google Play, I'm sure. But those are both perfectly fine places. I'm sure 98, 99% of our listeners, that's where they're listening to this episode right now. So you should be fine there. Bi-weekly, you say you come out, so definitely take a look for them. It's called, they have to search Clodcast now, not Sox Talk.
2 words, Clodcast.
Clod, C-L-O-D, right? Clod.
Yes. Not the French spelling.
Believe me, if you look up Clodcast, I don't think you're finding anything else.
But if you look up Socks Talk, you get weirdly a ton of options. There's a lot of podcasts talking about the red and white socks.
Well, I'm glad you guys brought it back and found a way to keep it going forward ad infinitum. Thank you guys for coming. Real quick, as we're being played out, both of you in a sentence, give me your reaction to Disney adults.
Bad, but like weirdly, they're kind of my type. I think.
The salt of the earth, but also the scum of the earth.
That's your line right there.
They're like bottom feeders, but they're bottom feeders that are nice to people.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Grant, say goodnight.
Good night.
And then there's Clod. No, I said Clod.
So it's gonna be Frasier v. Freddy in a spelling bee because Frasier's like battling aging, and Frasier's like lost a step, but he's like, no, I can, with practice I can do it. So David is gonna help train Frasier. Eve is gonna help train Freddy, but that's the C plot is that her baby's gonna say the first words.
Okay.
And the B plot is that, oh, you're wondering what Alan and the Harvard head of psychology is doing? They found a tablet that might be able to solve linear A, so they're working on that. And then they're gonna like spill barbecue sauce on it or something, and it's just gonna go away forever.
Well, I will tell you, I've long been waiting for them to solve linear A. It's quite annoying.
So I'm gonna tease you.
Yeah, I joke, but like this is all my bread and butter was these ancient languages. Like
I know, believe me.
I know. That's why I'm laughing.
This was my middle school, high school. Like, I love this idea.
Pat, this is why I put linear A in there. Your name checked in the first page. Because Frasier's writing a letter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's like, dear Professor Skeyhill. And then yada yada.
Wow.
But then we say that because then he has a spelling mistake in it, which is how we get into it. And then like balls up the letter and tosses it.
Is Grant, are you coming in here?
I didn't get the Zoom link. I'm waiting.
You should have been on the same
I got it, Grant.
You should have been on the same email as...
Maybe you typed my name wrong?
I could have...
You guys are going to get to see my Peacemaker Hot Toys figure. You guys are going to be so impressed.
I don't know what that means.
God.
That's the picture I sent.
Grant, I'm looking at my tagged photos. If anyone looks at my tagged photos, half is fucking Clod and socks. I'm so fucked.
What else would there be, to be honest?
To be honest, not much. Carly's tagged me a few times. I guess randomly. I don't know. I guess I'm around.
Okay. Now we're...
And Anastasia, of course.
Yeah, now I got it.
Okay, thank God.
This is Peacemaker.
Okay. Who's he? He's like a superhero?
He's
Get fucked, Grant. That's 0 for 2.
He's in the Suicide Squad, and there's the Peacemaker TV show.
Okay.
I have sneakers that are designed like him,
I mean,
too.
like, nobody should be surprised. I don't count, because, like, obviously I was not going to know.
No,
you weren't,
Pat.
but I just wanted to show you because I got him and he's new.
Pat, AT&T girl's assistant wasn't charmed either.
But you know what she was charmed by? My hot new bling.
All right.